Rain came down like the sky had cracked open. It wasn't a soft drizzle. It was the kind of storm that makes even traffic lights flicker and people sprint for cover. Hannah Wells stood under the flickering awning outside Riverside Diner, clutching her thin dollar store umbrella. The night shift had ended late, and her sneakers were already soaked. The rain had turned Main Street into a river of reflections, headlights, puddles, and neon signs swimming together in cold, restless motion. She rubbed her arms through her cheap polyester jacket, checking her watch. The bus was running 20 minutes late, as always. Her eyelids felt heavy from 12 hours on her feet. 12 hours of refilling coffee, pretending to smile, and dodging the manager's sharp tone. That's when she noticed an old man stood near the corner. No umbrella, rain pouring down his face. His coat looked expensive once. Wool, long, tailored. But now it clung to him like a wet rag. His silver hair was plastered against his forehead, and his trembling hands clutched a small leather briefcase. He looked lost. Not the kind of "I missed my stop" lost, the kind that carries 30 years of nowhere left to. She hesitated. Her mom's voice echoed in her mind. "Kindness doesn't make you rich, sweetheart, but it keeps you human." She walked over, holding her umbrella above him. "Sir, you'll catch pneumonia out here," she said. He blinked at her through the rain. I'm fine," he mumbled, but his lips were blue. She smiled faintly. "You don't look fine. Here." She pressed the handle into his hand. He looked startled. No, I can't take your umbrella." "You can," she insisted, backing away before he could refuse again. "I live close. Just keep dry, okay?" For a second, they stood there in silence, the hum of rain filling the space between them. His eyes searched her face, confused, curious, almost fearful. "What's your name?" he asked softly. She hesitated. Hannah Wells." Something flickered in his gaze, like a candle reigniting in the dark. His lips parted slightly, but no words came out. "Hannah," he repeated under his breath. His voice cracked, barely audible through the storm. Before she could ask if he was all right, the bus squealed around the corner, splashing a wave of dirty water over the curb. She turned toward it. "That's my ride!" He reached out as if to stop her, but she was already running. "Wait!" he called, but his voice was swallowed by thunder. She climbed aboard, scanning for an empty seat. Through the fogged window, she saw him standing alone beneath her umbrella, staring after her. Something about the way he stood, rigid, trembling, stuck in her chest like a thorn. When she got home, her mom was asleep on the couch, the TV murmuring softly in the background. Hannah placed a blanket over her and sighed. Her tips barely covered rent, and the hospital had sent another late notice. She pulled off her wet shoes, staring out the window at the storm still raging beyond. Somewhere out there, a stranger was holding her umbrella, whispering her name like it meant something. She didn't know that this small act, the simple gift of staying dry, had just opened the door to a story buried for 30 years. Because that man, the one standing under her umbrella, wasn't a stranger at all. He was the last living link to the family she never knew she had. The morning after the storm, sunlight tried to squeeze through the blinds of the tiny apartment Hannah shared with her mother. It didn't make it far. Dust floated in the weak light like tired snowflakes, settling over stacks of unopened mail and bottles of cheap medicine. The smell of burnt toast drifted from the kitchenette. "Morning, honey," her mother called, coughing softly. "Morning, Mum," Hannah said, tying her damp hair into a messy bun. She poured coffee into 2 chipped mugs. "You didn't sleep again, did you?" Her mother, Ellen Wells, waved it off. "Who can sleep with these knees? They creak like an old house." She smiled, but her eyes were dull with exhaustion. The arthritis had gotten worse, and the new prescription was still waiting at the pharmacy because they couldn't afford it until Friday. Hannah placed the mug in front of her. "Drink. It's hot." Ellen took a sip and winced. Sweetheart, you're running yourself into the ground. I saw those bags under your eyes last night. Just a long shift, Hannah said. She didn't mention that her boss had cut her hours again, or that she'd spent her bus ride home worrying about rent. Her mother noticed the missing umbrella by the door. Where's your umbrella? The good one? Hannah hesitated, then shrugged. Gave it to some guy out in the storm. He looked like he hadn't eaten or slept in days. Ellen paused. You gave it away. He needed it more than me. Her mother stared at her for a moment, then smiled sadly. You're too much like your father. Hannah's chest tightened. Dad would have done the same. Silence hung in the air. The only sound was the ticking of the old wall clock. Ellen reached for a locket hanging from her neck and rubbed it with her thumb. Inside was a faded photo of two young men, one with the same crooked smile Hannah saw in the mirror every morning. She opened it, staring at the faces. Your father and his brother, she murmured. Back before everything went wrong. You mean Uncle Ethan? Hannah asked. Ellen nodded, her eyes distant. He disappeared after your grandfather died. Some fight about money, about pride. No one ever heard from him again. Your dad never forgave himself for it. Hannah had grown up on that story, but it always felt like a bedtime myth. Families fought, people vanished. That was life. But last night, something about that old man's eyes haunted her. The way he'd said her name, like it meant something sacred. Her mother noticed her silence. What's that look? Nothing, Hannah said quickly. Just thinking. Ellen reached over and squeezed her hand. Don't think too much, baby. You carry enough already. Hannah forced a smile, but her mind was racing. At work later that day, the diner buzzed with gossip. Her co-worker Tanya leaned on the counter. You hear about that rich guy who left some random waitress a $10,000 tip? Wild, right? Yeah, Hannah muttered, flipping through the order pad. Swear to God, it happened right here in town, Tanya continued. Maybe I need to start giving away umbrellas, too. Hannah laughed softly, but felt a chill crawl up her spine. $10,000. A mysterious stranger. A gift that didn't make sense. When her shift ended, she walked home through the drizzle, every puddle reflecting fragments of her thoughts. She kept replaying that moment in the storm, the trembling hands, the startled eyes, the quiet whisper. Hannah Wells. Back in the apartment, she found her mom asleep again, the locket resting open on her chest. Hannah brushed a strand of grey hair from her mother's forehead and whispered, We'll be okay. Somehow. But deep down, she knew something had already changed. Because sometimes, the smallest kindness doesn't end with a thank you. It begins a story that refuses to stay buried. The bell above the diner door jingled like it did every morning, but something felt different. The Riverside Diner smelled of burnt coffee and maple syrup, the usual soundtrack of clattering plates filling the air. Hannah tied her apron tighter, trying to ignore the ache in her legs. Tanya, her co-worker, rushed in, holding her phone like it was on fire. You are not going to believe this, she blurted, waving the screen. Hannah sighed. If it's another celebrity divorce, I'm not interested. Tanya laughed, shaking her head. No, girl, this is local. Look! On the screen was a blurry picture of the diner's front door. Their diner. Underneath, the headline screamed, Mystery millionaire leaves 10,000 tip for waitress after stormy night. Hannah froze. Wait, what? Yeah, Tanya said, grinning wide. Some guy came in, left a massive tip, didn't even leave a name. The manager says it happened here last night. Hannah's stomach dropped. But I closed the shift last night. Tanya raised an eyebrow. Then maybe you just got a promotion from the universe, sweetheart. Before Hannah could respond, their manager Carl stepped out of the back room with his arms crossed. No one's getting any promotions, and whoever's spreading lies about my diner better stop before corporate calls. It's not a lie, Tanya shot back. It's on Channel 7, Carl scowled. I checked the receipts. No one left a $10,000 tip, just the usual lousy ones. This is some PR stunt. He glared at Hannah. "Unless you know something I don't." "Me?" Hannah blinked. "No, I went straight home after closing." Carl studied her for a beat too long. "Good. Because if I find out any of you are talking to reporters, you're fired. Got it?" Hannah nodded, though her mind was already miles away. Back to the rain, the man, the umbrella. All day, customers buzzed about it. "Did you hear? The millionaire left his fortune to a waitress. They say he's looking for someone. Maybe he's got a crush." By noon, even the local news van pulled up outside. Hannah kept her head down, wiping tables, pretending she didn't exist. Tanya nudged her. "You sure you don't know anything? I mean, come on. Weren't you the only one closing?" "I told you no," Hannah said softly. But she didn't sound convincing, not even to herself. During her break, she slipped into the alley behind the diner. The rain had left everything slick and shining. She leaned against the brick wall, pulling out her phone. On impulse, she searched the headline. There it was again. The same article. The same blurred image of the diner's sign in the storm. "Anonymous benefactor seen leaving in black car." Her heart pounded. The article mentioned a silver-haired man, mid to late 60s, carrying a briefcase. Her throat tightened. The description matched him exactly. She locked her phone and closed her eyes. It couldn't be him. Could it? A horn honked from the street. A black sedan idled across the road, its tinted windows reflecting the diner's neon sign. For a moment, she thought she saw movement inside, a figure watching. Carl's voice snapped her back. "Break's over!" She shoved her phone into her apron and walked back in, her pulse hammering. But the moment she crossed the threshold, Tanya whispered, "You okay? You look like you've seen a ghost." "Maybe I have," Hannah said under her breath. That night, as the diner lights dimmed and the streets went quiet, she stepped outside with her tips clutched in hand. The same black car from earlier rolled slowly past the curb. The window lowered just enough for her to see a familiar silver head, the man from the storm. And as their eyes met, he mouthed something she could barely hear. "We need to talk." 2 days passed before Hannah saw him again. The morning rush was halfway through when the bell over the diner door chimed. She turned, expecting a delivery driver or a soaked tourist. Instead, the air shifted. Conversation slowed. Forks paused mid-air. He was back. The old man from the storm stood in the doorway, dry, polished, and almost regal. His long wool coat looked freshly pressed, his silver hair combed neatly, and his shoes shined like mirrors. He held the same briefcase from that rainy night, but this time it wasn't shaking in his hands. Carl, the manager, practically tripped over himself, rushing forward. "Good morning, sir. Table for one?" "Yes," the man said, his voice calm but firm. "That booth by the window, please." Hannah froze. That was her section. As Carl seated him, the man's eyes swept the room. When they landed on Hannah, he smiled, faintly, knowingly. Her stomach flipped. Carl called over. "Hannah, take care of our guest, yeah? Make it good. He looks like he tips big." Her hands felt clammy as she approached. "Good morning, sir. Welcome back to Riverside Diner." He studied her for a moment, like someone looking at an old photograph. "Good morning, Miss Wells." She blinked. "You remember my name?" "How could I forget?" His tone was soft, almost wistful. "You gave me your umbrella when I didn't deserve anyone's kindness." She laughed nervously. "I think anyone standing in that storm deserved one." He chuckled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "You underestimate how rare kindness is." She cleared her throat. "Coffee? The usual. Black? Please." When she brought the cup, he reached out, his hand steady now. "Sit for a moment, if your boss allows." Carl was busy yelling at the cook in the back. She hesitated, then slid into the booth across from him. "Just for a minute." He smiled faintly. "Fair enough." For a few seconds, they sat in silence. Rain tapped softly against the windows. Then he said, "You remind me of someone I used to know. Someone I lost a long time ago." Her brows furrowed. "Family?" His gaze dropped to the coffee. "Yes, family." The word hung heavy in the air. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out something small, a lighter. Silver, worn smooth by time. He turned it in his hand before setting it on the table. Engraved across the top were the initials E.W. "Beautiful piece," she said, studying it. "It belonged to my brother," he said quietly. "Or at least it used to, before I lost him." Something in her chest tightened. "I'm sorry." He nodded, eyes distant. "We said things we shouldn't have. Pride gets in the way of love. It always does." She wanted to ask more, but Carl's voice cut through the air. "Hannah, orders ready." She stood up quickly. "Duty calls." He smiled again. "Go on. But keep the lighter for now." Her eyes widened. "I can't." "Consider it a loan," he interrupted gently. "Until I see you again." She hesitated, then slipped it into her apron pocket. "Okay. But you better come back for it." "I will," he said softly. "Sooner than you think." As she walked away, Tanya whispered, "Who's the silver fox?" Hannah smiled faintly. "Just someone passing through." But when she glanced back, his booth was empty. No cup, no bill, no trace he'd been there at all. Only one thing remained. Her umbrella, folded neatly on the table, and under it, a note written in elegant handwriting. "Thank you, Hannah Wells, for more than you know." That night, Hannah couldn't stop replaying every detail. The man's voice, the lighter, the strange way he'd looked at her. It was like he knew her from a dream she didn't remember. After her shift, she walked home under the glow of the streetlights, the silver lighter heavy in her pocket. When she reached the apartment, the air inside was still and warm. Her mother was at the table, sorting through a small box of old keepsakes, a ritual she often did when the pain in her joints kept her awake. "Long night?" Ellen asked without looking up. "Yeah," Hannah said, setting her bag down. "But something weird happened. That old man from the storm came back to the diner." Her mother froze. "The same man?" "Yeah. Dressed like a Wall Street millionaire this time. Said his name was—" She trailed off. Actually, he hadn't given one. Ellen frowned. "What did he want?" "Just coffee," Hannah said, pulling the lighter from her pocket. "He left this with me. Said it belonged to his brother." Ellen turned, her expression tightening. "Let me see that." Hannah handed it over. The second her mother's fingers brushed the engraved initials, E.W. Her face drained of color. "Mom? What's wrong?" Ellen's voice trembled. "Where did you say you got this?" "He gave it to me." "Why?" Her mother's hand shook as she opened the box of keepsakes. Inside were yellowed photos, faded postcards, and a worn leather ribbon tied around a stack of letters. She dug until she found one photo. 2 young men, standing shoulder to shoulder at a county fair, both grinning like they owned the world. One of them was Hannah's father. The other wore the same ring, the same sharp jawline, the same eyes as the man in the diner. "That's him," Hannah whispered. Ellen nodded slowly. "That's Ethan, your uncle." The name hit Hannah like a jolt. "Uncle Ethan? But Dad said he was gone." Her mother's eyes filled with something between grief and guilt. "He was. They fought after your grandfather died. Over money, over pride, over things that didn't matter. Your father tried to find him. But Ethan disappeared. No letters, no calls. I thought he was dead." Hannah's heartbeat thundered in her ears. "He's not. He's alive, Mom. He's the man from the storm." Ellen gripped the photo tighter. "Are you sure?" "I'm sure." Her mother's eyes welled. "My God." The room felt smaller, heavier. The air carried a weight that pressed on both of them. Ellen ran a hand through her graying hair. "Why would he show up now, after all this time?" I don't know, Hannah said softly. But he knew my name. He looked at me like... She stopped, unsure how to finish. Like he saw your father, Ellen whispered. They sat in silence. Outside, the rain had started again, tapping gently on the window. Ellen finally looked up. That lighter. It was your father's once. He gave it to Ethan before he died. Said it would remind him that forgiveness matters more than pride. Hannah stared at the engraved letters. E.W. Forgiveness, pride, family. Ellen sighed. Your father would have wanted you to give it back. I plan to, Hannah said quietly. If he comes back. Ellen reached across the table, taking her daughter's hand. Be careful, honey. Sometimes people from the past don't come back for the right reasons. Hannah nodded, but she didn't believe that. There was something in Ethan's eyes, something sad, broken, and desperate. As she tucked the photo into her pocket, she didn't see the small note that had fallen from the box. In faded handwriting, it read, If she ever finds him, tell her the truth before he does. By Friday morning, the diner felt like a rumor mill spinning out of control. Every customer had a theory about the mystery millionaire. Hannah tried to drown it all out, but the silver lighter in her apron pocket felt like a magnet pulling her thoughts back to him. Around lunchtime, Carl barked her name from across the counter. Mail for you, Wells. She frowned. Mail? Here? He tossed a cream-colored envelope her way. Heavy paper. Real ink. No return address, just her name in elegant cursive. Miss Hannah Wells. Tanya whistled. That's fancy. Maybe your rich Storm guy finally decided to tip. Hannah rolled her eyes, but her fingers trembled as she broke the wax seal. Inside was a card thick as cardboard and smelling faintly of cedar. It read, To Miss Wells, your kindness was not forgotten. I'd like to thank you properly. Dinner. Saturday, 7 p.m. The Briarwood Estate. Please consider this an invitation, not an obligation. E.W. She didn't move, didn't blink. Holy crap, Tanya whispered, leaning over her shoulder. Briarwood? That's the place up on the hill, right? The one with its own zip code. Carl snatched the card and read it himself. You're not going, he said flatly. What? Why not? Because it's weird as hell, that's why. Some rich old guy inviting one of my waitresses to his mansion? No way. It's not like that, Hannah argued, though she wasn't sure what it was like. He's my... She stopped herself before saying uncle. He's just someone my dad used to know. Carl folded his arms. Well, your dad's not signing your paychecks. You are not getting mixed up in something like that. I run a diner, not a reality show. Tanya smirked. Oh, come on, Carl. Live a little. It's probably just dinner and a thank you. Or a setup, he snapped. Rich people don't do anything for free. But Hannah couldn't shake the pull in her chest. Something about that man, the sadness in his voice, the guilt in his eyes, it didn't feel dangerous. It felt unfinished. That night, she sat on the couch with her mother, the invitation in her lap. The TV flickered with some old crime show, but Ellen wasn't watching. Let me see it, she said quietly. Hannah handed it over. Ellen traced the handwriting with a trembling finger. It's his. I'd know it anywhere. So it's real, Hannah murmured. Her mother nodded, eyes shining. He must have found out who you are. Maybe he wants to make peace. Or maybe he wants something, Hannah said. Ellen sighed. You sound like your father. That's not a bad thing. No, her mother said softly. But your father's stubbornness nearly cost him his brother once. She looked up, serious now. If you go, promise me you'll be careful. Don't go alone. I'll be fine, Mum. Ellen reached for her hand. Bring the lighter. If he really is Ethan, that's what will prove it. The next evening, Hannah stood in front of her small mirror, smoothing down the only dress she owned that didn't smell like fryer grease. It was simple, navy blue, just past her knees. She clipped her mother's locket around her neck and tucked the lighter inside her purse. Outside, A sleek black car waited by the curb. The driver, dressed in grey, stepped out and opened the door without a word. "Miss Wells," he said. "Mr. Wells is expecting you." Her heart skipped. Mr. Wells. The name sounded foreign and familiar all at once. As the car pulled away from her block, city lights faded into darkness. Through the rain-speckled window, the silhouette of the Briarwood estate loomed on the horizon, massive, glowing, and waiting. And somewhere inside, a man with her last name was preparing to change everything. The drive to Briarwood estate felt like a dream Hannah couldn't quite believe she was inside of. The car wound through endless oak trees, their branches arching like a cathedral over the gravel road. The headlights caught glimpses of iron gates, marble statues, and fountains that looked frozen in time. When the car stopped, she stepped out onto a circular driveway that gleamed under soft rain. The mansion towered above her. Stone walls, tall arched windows, and light spilling through sheer curtains like warm gold. She swallowed hard. "Wow." The driver gave a polite nod. "Mr. Wells is waiting inside, miss." Her heels clicked against the marble steps as she climbed to the entrance. The front doors, massive and carved with roses, opened before she even reached for them. A butler stood there, grey-haired, expression unreadable. "Good evening, Miss Wells. Welcome to Briarwood." Her voice came out smaller than she intended. "Hi." "Thank you." He led her through a grand hallway, lined with portraits. The ceilings were so high they seemed to hold their own weather. Hannah's eyes darted from oil paintings of stern-faced men to delicate landscapes. Then she froze. Halfway down the hall hung a painting of two young brothers, one smiling, one serious. The serious one wore a silver ring with a phoenix carved into it. Her breath caught. "That's him." The butler paused. "Yes, ma'am. Mr. Ethan Wells and his late brother, Daniel." Daniel. Her father. Before she could speak, a deep voice echoed from the next room. "Let her in, Charles." The butler stepped aside. Ethan Wells stood by the fireplace, no longer the fragile man from the storm. He looked like a photograph come to life, tall, sharply dressed in navy and grey, his eyes reflecting both intellect and weariness. "Miss Wells," he said warmly, gesturing toward the fire. "You made it." Hannah nodded, unsure what to do with her hands. "Thank you for inviting me." He studied her face for a long moment. "You look so much like him." "My father?" she asked quietly. He nodded. "Daniel. I thought I'd never see that face again." The words hit her like a soft punch. "You knew who I was?" "I suspected," he said. "When you told me your name that night, I felt something I hadn't felt in decades. I had to be sure." He walked to a small table and picked up an envelope. "This house holds too many ghosts, Hannah. Your father's memory has lived here longer than I have." She frowned. "Why didn't you come back sooner? He tried to find you." Ethan's eyes clouded. "I know. I read his letters. Years too late. Someone made sure they never reached me." She blinked. "Who?" He hesitated. "Family business partners. People who profited from division. When Daniel died, they told me his wife and child had moved away. They said you both wanted nothing to do with me." Her pulse quickened. "That's not true." "I know that now." He stepped closer, his voice cracking slightly. "And I can't change what I lost. But maybe I can fix what's left." From the envelope, he pulled out a check. "This isn't charity. It's what should have been yours all along." Hannah shook her head. "I didn't come here for money." Ethan smiled faintly. "Then come for the truth." He reached into his coat and took out something small, a gold key with intricate markings. "Tomorrow, meet me here again. There's something in the study you need to see. Something your father wanted you to have." Hannah looked down at the key, cool and heavy in her hand. "What is it?" Ethan's expression darkened. Proof that what tore this family apart wasn't an accident. A gust of wind rattled the window, thunder rumbling far away, and in that flicker of lightning she saw it, the portrait's painted eyes glinting like they knew the secret first. Saturday night, the rain had stopped, but Briarwood Estate looked like a memory carved from fog. Hannah's cab rolled to a stop at the iron gates. She clutched the small gold key Ethan had given her, its edges worn smooth by time. A uniformed guard waved her through. "Mr. Wells is expecting you, miss." Inside, the mansion was glowing with low light. The chandeliers burned like captured stars, and the air smelled faintly of cedar and old books. Every corner whispered wealth, but not comfort, like someone had built beauty to hide grief. Ethan was waiting in the grand dining hall. The table stretched farther than her apartment. At its head, he stood with 2 glasses of red wine. "You came," he said softly, his smile barely there. "I said I would." She glanced around. "You live alone?" "For a long time, yes," he replied. "But loneliness becomes a kind of furniture. You stop noticing it after a while." He gestured for her to sit. As she lowered herself into the chair, she felt the weight of the portraits on the walls. The same faces from before, all painted in generations of stoic elegance. The only warmth came from the fire. "I remember family dinners," Ethan said, staring into the flames. "Your father always told stories. He had a way of making everyone laugh, even when things were falling apart." Hannah smiled faintly. "Mum said the same thing. Said he could make bad days feel lighter." Ethan's eyes softened. "She was a kind woman, your mother. Daniel wrote about her often." Her heart skipped. "You read his letters?" "I did. The ones I managed to get." His jaw tightened. "After our father died, his attorney handled the estate. The man was supposed to deliver everything fairly, but greed is a poison that seeps in quietly. Letters disappeared, accounts restructured. I was told Daniel took his share and left for good. But it was all a lie." "Who lied to you?" He exhaled slowly. "A man named Richard Cole. He was my father's business partner and the executor of the estate. He played both sides, and by the time I realized it, Daniel was gone." Hannah frowned. "What does this have to do with me?" Ethan looked straight at her. "Cole's son now runs what's left of the company. He's still pulling strings, rewriting the family's past. And what he's after is something Daniel left behind. That key in your hand." She looked down at the small gold key. It doesn't even look important." Ethan's voice dropped. "It opens a safe in my father's old study. What's inside proves everything. Who stole from us and who tried to erase you." The words landed like thunder. "Why me?" she whispered. "Why give it to me now?" He smiled sadly. "Because I'm dying, Hannah, and I don't want this family name buried under lies." Her breath caught. "You can't just drop that on me." "I'm not asking you for pity," he said. "Just courage." She shook her head, trying to process it all. "You don't even know me." He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small envelope. "I know enough." Inside was a photograph, her father holding a baby in his arms. The baby was her. Across the back, in her father's handwriting, it read, "For Ethan. If you ever find her, tell her the truth." Her throat closed up. "Tomorrow morning," Ethan said quietly. "We open that safe together." She stood, clutching the photo, her chest tight. "And if we do?" "Then, Hannah," he whispered, "you'll finally see what your father died protecting." Lightning flashed beyond the window, casting long shadows across the table. And in that heartbeat of Saint-Soir, the past stopped being history. It started breathing again. Morning came grey and quiet. The fog clung to Briarwood's gardens like a secret that didn't want to lift. Hannah barely slept. Her mind kept circling the same words. Proof, lies, erasing the past. She met Ethan in the east corridor. He looked smaller today, older, as if the truth itself was a weight pressing on his shoulders. "You ready?" he asked. "I think so," she said, though she didn't believe it. They walked in silence until they reached a heavy wooden door at the end of the hall. It was carved with initials, J.W., their grandfather's name, Jonathan Wells. Ethan rested a trembling hand on the handle. He built this room himself, spent most of his life here writing letters no one ever read. The door creaked open, releasing a faint scent of leather and dust. Books lined every wall, old ledgers stacked on the desk like sleeping beasts. A single portrait dominated the far wall, Jonathan Wells in his prime, staring down at them with cold, piercing eyes. "Feels like walking into a museum," Hannah murmured. "It's a tomb," Ethan said quietly, "and we're about to disturb it." He motioned toward an ornate cabinet near the fireplace. At its base was a small brass lock, its teeth worn smooth by decades. Hannah pulled the gold key from her pocket. Her fingers shook as she slid it into place. The lock clicked softly, and the cabinet door opened with a slow sigh. Inside sat a small black safe, no bigger than a shoebox. Ethan knelt, pressing his palm against the metal as if greeting an old ghost. "Combination 7-14-59, he said. "His birthday?" "His death date," Ethan corrected. "Fitting, isn't it?" The dial turned, metal grinding. Then the safe popped open. Inside were stacks of papers, yellowed and fragile, bound together with ribbon. On top lay an envelope sealed in red wax. Written in bold, slanted handwriting were the words, "For my sons." Ethan's breath hitched. "That's his will." He handed it to Hannah. "Read it." Her hands trembled as she unfolded the brittle pages. The will wasn't what she expected. It wasn't about money or property. It was a confession. Jonathan Wells had discovered embezzlement inside his own company. His business partner, Richard Cole, had siphoned millions, hiding it through shell accounts and false ledgers. Before he could expose him, Jonathan fell mysteriously ill. His final words on paper accused Cole and warned his sons, "Trust no one but each other." Hannah's heart pounded. "He knew. He tried to stop him." Ethan's jaw tightened, and Cole silenced him, then turned Daniel and me against each other to finish what he started. The realization settled like ice in her stomach. "He killed your father." "I believe he did." Ethan's voice broke. "And when Daniel died in that car crash, Cole got everything he wanted. Control of the company, the money, and the power." Hannah stepped back, overwhelmed. "So all this, you've been living with this guilt for years?" He nodded slowly. "I thought I'd failed my brother, but now, maybe we can set it right." He picked up the documents and looked at her with trembling hands. "We need to get these notarized before Cole's son finds out. He'll stop at nothing to bury them again." Before she could respond, a sudden thud echoed down the hall. Ethan froze. "Did you hear that?" The sound came again, heavier this time. Footsteps. The door burst open. Two men in suits stood there, cold and expressionless. One of them held a gun. "Mr. Wells," the taller one said calmly. "Mr. Cole sends his regards. He'll be taking those papers." Ethan stepped in front of Hannah. "Over my dead body." The man smiled faintly. "That can be arranged." Lightning flashed outside, throwing their shadows across the study wall. And for the first time, Hannah realized the past wasn't just haunting them. It was coming to finish the job. The air in the study turned sharp. The taller man's gun gleamed beneath the chandelier's light, steady and confident. The second man shut the door behind them with a quiet click. Ethan didn't move. His voice was calm but laced with steel. "Tell Richard he's too late. The truth's out." The man laughed softly. "Oh, Mr. Wells, the truth is whatever survives the night." Hannah's stomach knotted. She could hear her pulse in her ears. "What do you want?" she asked. The man's eyes flicked toward her. "Just the documents, sweetheart. Hand them over and we'll leave you both breathing." Ethan shook his head. "Not happening." "Then you'll make this harder than it has to be." Before Hannah could blink, the man lunged forward. Ethan shoved her aside, grabbing a heavy bookend from the desk and swinging it. The blow landed against the man's wrist, knocking the gun loose. It skidded across the floor, hitting the base of the fireplace. "Run, Hannah!" Ethan shouted. She hesitated, frozen in the chaos, until Ethan's second yell jolted her. "Go!" She grabbed the safe papers and bolted down the hall. Behind her, footsteps thundered. The butler, Charles, appeared at the corner, startled. "Miss Wells, what on earth?" "Call the police," she gasped. "They're armed." Charles's eyes widened as she sprinted past him toward the front door. She could hear shouts echoing behind her. Ethan's voice, the crash of furniture, a gunshot splitting the air. Her heart stopped. "Ethan!" she screamed, turning back. Charles grabbed her arm. "Don't!" She struggled. "Let me go! He's... Miss Wells, please!" Charles's voice trembled. "He told me if anything happened, I had to get you out." Another shot echoed, then silence. Tears burned her eyes. "We can't just leave him. He wouldn't want you to die, too." Charles pulled her through a side door and out into the rain-soaked courtyard. A black sedan sat waiting near the gate, Ethan's car. "Get in," the butler said, tossing her the keys. She hesitated. "What about you?" He gave her a sad smile. "Someone has to stall them." "Charles!" He pushed her toward the car. "Go, now!" Hannah jumped in, the engine roaring to life. As she sped down the long gravel drive, the mansion loomed behind her like a ghost, dissolving into mist. Rain hammered the windshield. Her hands shook so badly she could barely steer. She kept glancing in the rearview mirror, half expecting headlights to appear. But there was only darkness. She pulled over near an abandoned gas station, gasping for air. Her reflection in the window barely looked like her. Soaked hair, wild eyes, streaks of dirt on her cheek. She opened the envelope and stared at the documents, the ink blurred slightly by moisture. Her father's name was everywhere, his handwriting in the margins, notes about the Cole family, proof of everything Ethan said. Her phone buzzed in her pocket, an unknown number. She hesitated, then answered. "Hello?" A man's voice came through, low and smooth. "You have something that doesn't belong to you, Miss Wells." Her throat tightened. "Who is this?" "You know who," the voice said. "You're in way over your head. Hand over the papers, and this ends quietly." She hung up, tossing the phone onto the seat. Her hands were shaking too hard to dial anyone else. The distant sound of sirens began to rise in the distance. She didn't know if they were coming for her or for what was left of Briarwood. Her chest heaved. "Ethan," she whispered, staring through the rain. "Please be alive." Then her phone lit up again. One new message. No name. Just 2 words. "He's gone." The screen blurred as tears filled her eyes. And somewhere deep inside her, grief began to twist into something colder. Because whoever took her uncle's life was about to learn. She wasn't running anymore. The next morning, Hannah sat in a motel room off Highway 17, wrapped in a thin blanket that smelled like bleach and fear. The blinds were closed, but sunlight bled through in thin gold lines. On the bed beside her were the papers from Ethan's safe, wrinkled, water-stained, but intact. She hadn't slept. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Ethan falling, heard the gunshot echo again. The text still glowed on her phone screen. "He's gone." But who had sent it? Charles? The man on the phone? Or someone else entirely? Her thoughts spiraled until a knock at the door made her jump. She froze. Another knock, gentler this time. "Miss Wells," a voice called. "It's Charles." Her chest tightened. She cracked the door open, chain still latched. The butler stood there, raincoat soaked, eyes red from exhaustion. "Charles," she breathed, "you're alive." "Barely," he said, forcing a smile. "I thought they'd come after you." "They did," she said, opening the door fully. "How bad was it?" He stepped inside, removing his hat. "Ethan's gone. The police found him in the study. It was made to look like a heart attack." Her throat clenched. "No," she whispered. He was fine. Charles nodded grimly. That's what they wanted it to look like. The paramedics didn't question it. They never do when money's involved. Hannah sat down hard on the bed. Then the cops won't help us. No, he said softly, but there's something else. Ethan told me about a second will, one your father helped him draft years ago. It proves the company wasn't Cole's to inherit, but he hid it before he died. She looked up. Where? Charles hesitated. Somewhere inside the Wells Foundation building. He said only family would be able to find it. There's a key, and from what I understand. He glanced at the envelope on the bed. You might already have it. Hannah reached for her purse and pulled out the gold key Ethan had given her. This one? He nodded. Yes. It opens a safe hidden in the old archives. If that will still exists, it could destroy the Coles empire. Her pulse quickened. Then we go get it. Charles frowned. They'll be watching the place. Then we'll go at night. He sighed. You sound like Ethan. Good, she said. Maybe that's what we need. They waited until evening. The city lights blurred through the drizzle as Hannah parked a borrowed car, 2 blocks from the Wells Foundation tower. It was sleek glass and steel, 40 floors high, an empire built on betrayal. Charles adjusted his cap. Security guards rotate every 30 minutes. We'll have a window. Hannah swallowed hard. You sure about this? No, he said, but I owe Ethan, and you deserve answers. Inside, the building was eerily quiet. Their footsteps echoed off marble floors. They moved through dim corridors until they reached the basement level marked Archives. Charles typed a code into an old keypad, and the door clicked open. The air smelled of dust and paper. Rows of cabinets stretched endlessly. At the far end, a steel panel was embedded in the wall. Hannah approached it, the gold key warm in her hand. She slipped it into the slot and turned. The lock gave way with a heavy clank. Inside sat a single document in a plastic sleeve. Across the top, it read, Last Will and Testament of Ethan Wells. She stared at it, heart pounding. We found it. Charles smiled faintly. We did. But before she could lift the paper, a sharp click echoed behind them, metal against metal. Step away from the safe, Miss Wells, a cold voice ordered. She turned slowly. 2 men stood at the doorway. The taller one, Richard Cole's son, smiled like a wolf. You've got something that belongs to me. Hannah squared her shoulders, the document clutched to her chest. Funny, she said through clenched teeth. My family's name is on it. His smile widened. Then I guess it's time to erase your family for good. And as he raised the gun, Hannah realized she'd just unlocked more than a safe. She'd unlocked a war. The metallic sound of the gun cocking froze the air. Hannah's fingers tightened around the document, her pulse pounding so hard she could hear it in her ears. Richard Cole Jr. stepped forward, his tailored suit immaculate, his smile thin and practiced. Miss Wells, he said smoothly, I admire your courage. Breaking into a corporate building, stealing classified documents, it's impressive. Stupid, but impressive. Charles moved in front of her. She didn't steal anything. That will belong to her family. Cole's eyes flicked to him with cold amusement. You must be the butler, always loyal to a dying cause. Charles didn't flinch. Better a loyal man than a thief. Cole's smile faded. Give me the papers, or I'll end this conversation permanently. Hannah lifted her chin. You already ended enough lives. You killed Ethan. He chuckled softly. Please. My father handled that. Heart attacks are so convincing with the right dosage. The words hit her like a slap. You're admitting it. Why not? He said, shrugging. You won't live long enough to repeat it. Charles shifted his weight, eyes darting to the side. There. A red fire alarm on the wall. He glanced at Hannah, a silent message passing between them. She gave the smallest nod. Cole's voice dripped with arrogance. I don't understand why Ethan dragged you into this. A waitress? You think you belong in our world? You're a distraction, nothing more. Something inside Hannah snapped. You're right, she said, her voice trembling but fierce. I'm a waitress. I serve coffee. I scrape by. But at least I can sleep at night, knowing I didn't destroy people's lives for money. Cole's smirk faltered. Cute speech. Then Charles moved. In one swift motion, he slammed his elbow into the fire alarm. The shrill beep exploded through the archive room, followed by flashing red lights. Cole flinched. You idiot! The sprinkler system erupted overhead, drenching everyone in a downpour. Water streamed over the stacks of papers, the floor slick beneath their feet. In the chaos, Hannah lunged for the exit. Go! Charles shouted, pushing her forward. Cole grabbed for her arm, but slipped on the wet floor, cursing. Hannah sprinted down the hall, clutching the document to her chest. She could hear shouting behind her, footsteps pounding, Charles yelling. Then a gunshot cracked through the noise. Charles! She screamed, turning back, but another voice roared, Keep moving! She stumbled through a side stairwell, soaked and shaking, the emergency lights flickering overhead. Every step echoed like thunder in her ears. At the ground floor, she burst through an emergency door and into the rain-soaked parking lot. Red lights flashed from fire trucks pulling up to the curb. She ducked behind a concrete barrier, breathing hard, her heart hammering against the document in her hands. The will was wet but legible. Ethan's name stared back at her, his last words clear. To Hannah Wells, the rightful heir of the Wells estate, I leave not just inheritance, but the truth. Tears mixed with the rain on her face. Then her phone buzzed again. Unknown number. She hesitated before answering. Hello? A calm, chilling voice spoke. You think this is over? You took something that doesn't belong to you. We can find you anywhere. Her stomach dropped. Who is this? Someone who cleans up other people's mistakes. The line went dead. Hannah's breath came fast and shallow. She stared out at the fire trucks and police swarming the building. She should have felt safe, but all she felt was hunted. She stood slowly, clutching the soaked papers tighter. You wanted to erase us, she whispered, but you picked the wrong girl. As she walked toward the flashing lights, the sirens wailing behind her, she didn't notice the black SUV idling at the corner, its tinted window rolling down just enough for a camera lens to focus on her face. And miles away, a voice said into the phone, She's still alive. Handle it. Rain slammed against the motel windows that night, drumming like an endless warning. Hannah sat at the small table, the lamp flickering weakly as she spread the water-stained documents across the surface. The will, the confession, every page was proof that Ethan had been right. But proof meant nothing if the world never saw it. Her phone buzzed again. Unknown number. Another message. You can't hide forever. She slammed it face down on the table. You want me to be scared, she muttered, but I'm done running. A knock at the door made her freeze. One soft tap, then another. Her heart jumped. Who is it? It's Charles, came the muffled reply. Open up, quickly. She peered through the peephole. He looked exhausted, his coat soaked through. But it was him. She unlocked the chain and pulled the door open. Charles, she whispered, relief flooding her. He stepped inside and shut the door. They're watching the highways. You have to leave town. Leave, she said sharply. And do what? Hide forever? They killed Ethan. They tried to kill you. If I disappear now, they win. Charles sighed heavily. You don't understand who you're dealing with. The Coles have power in every corner of this city. Police, judges, banks, everything. Then I'll go higher, she said, gripping the papers. Media, lawyers. Someone will listen. He stared at her, studying the fire in her eyes. You sound like your father, he murmured. That's the best compliment I've had all week. Before he could respond, headlights swept across the window. A car slowed in the parking lot. Charles's voice dropped to a whisper. Get down. They ducked below the table as footsteps approached the door. A moment later, 3 sharp knocks. A man's voice called, smooth and mocking, "Miss Wells, we'd like to talk." Hannah's pulse raced. "It's him," she mouthed. "Richard Cole, Jr." The doorknob rattled. "You can open it," he said, "or I can break it down. Either way, this ends tonight." Charles's eyes flicked to the back window. "Go," he whispered. "I'm not leaving you again." He gave her a hard look. "You'll be no good to Ethan's memory if you're dead. Go." The door splintered with a loud crack. Cole stepped inside, flanked by 2 men in black suits. Hannah scrambled toward the bathroom, clutching the papers, as Charles stood in their way. "Where is she?" Cole demanded. Charles didn't answer. One of the men struck him hard in the ribs. "Stop!" Hannah shouted, stepping out from the shadows. "I'm here." Cole turned, smiling. "Good girl. Why are you doing this?" she asked. "Your father stole everything from mine. Isn't that enough?" He chuckled. "You think this is about money? This is about control. The Wells name is a stain on my family. And stains," he said, raising his gun, "need to be erased." Hannah's voice shook. "You'll never get away with this. The truth's already out." He smirked. "Is it? Last I checked, no one believes a waitress with a criminal record for trespassing." Charles, bleeding but conscious, suddenly lunged forward, tackling the nearest guard. The gun fired, a deafening blast. Hannah ducked, glass shattering around her. She ran, pushing through the bathroom door, clutching the papers tight. There was a small window above the tub, barely wide enough. She shoved the documents through first, then herself, scraping her arms on the frame. Outside, she landed hard in the mud, gasping. Behind her, another gunshot thundered. "Charles!" she screamed. But no answer came. Only rain. She staggered to her feet, clutching the will against her chest. Cole's men were shouting inside, their voices muffled by the storm. She didn't look back. She ran into the darkness, barefoot, trembling, but alive. And as lightning tore across the sky, she swore that by sunrise, every secret they'd buried would be burning in the light. Hannah didn't stop running until her lungs burned and her legs went numb. By the time she reached the edge of town, dawn had begun to stretch pale light across the horizon. She found herself on a quiet street near the river, soaked, barefoot, and clutching a stack of papers that could get her killed. She ducked into an old laundromat, empty except for the hum of machines and the faint buzz of a neon open sign. She sank onto a plastic chair, her body shaking. Every muscle screamed, but her mind wouldn't rest. Cole's men had Charles. Ethan was dead, and she was next. She unrolled the documents again, scanning every page for something, anything, that could help. In the back of the folder, tucked behind the will, she found a folded note written in Ethan's handwriting. "Hannah, if you're reading this, then I failed to finish what your father started. Go to where the lilies grow. The truth waits beneath it." Her brows knitted. Where the lilies grow. Then it hit her. The house where she grew up. Her mother's garden had always been filled with lilies, rows and rows of them, blooming even in poor soil. She stood suddenly, adrenaline replacing exhaustion. "Mom," she whispered. It took 2 bus transfers and a long walk through back roads before she reached the small house she called home. The sight of it nearly broke her. Peeling paint, sagging porch, and the old wooden fence her father had built before he died. She pushed through the gate, scanning the yard. The lilies were still there, drooping from the rain, but alive. Her mother must have tended them through the night. "Mom?" she called softly. No answer. Inside, the house was quiet. A coffee cup sat on the counter, still half full. On the couch, a blanket was draped neatly, but the bed was empty. Her chest tightened. "Mom?" She stepped out back again, kneeling in the garden. The earth was soft from rain. Her father's old shovel leaned against the fence, rusted but solid. She picked it up and started digging where the lilies were tallest. The first few inches revealed nothing but mud and roots. But then, Clunk. The sound of metal against wood. She froze. Carefully, she brushed away the dirt until a small metal box appeared, sealed with a simple latch. She lifted it out, wiping it clean with trembling hands. Inside were letters, dozens of them, yellowed and bound by twine. The top one was addressed in her father's handwriting. To my brother, Ethan. Her breath caught. She untied the bundle and began to read. The letters told the story she'd only ever guessed. Her father and Ethan discovering Cole's embezzlement, their plan to expose him, the threats that followed. The last letter was different. Shorter. Desperate. If I don't make it, Ethan, promise me you'll find Hannah. Tell her what really happened. She deserves to know who her family is. Tears blurred the ink. She pressed the paper to her chest. Dad? Behind her, the creak of the gate made her spin. Her mother stood there, frail and pale, a scarf wrapped around her shoulders. Hannah, what are you doing? Mom, she breathed, running to her. It's true. Dad and Ethan, they were framed. I found their letters. Everything. Ellen's eyes filled with tears. I know, sweetheart. What do you mean, you know? Her mother hesitated, looking past her to the disturbed soil. Your father told me to keep that box buried until you were ready. I prayed you'd never have to dig it up. Hannah stared at her, stunned. You kept this from me? I was trying to protect you, Ellen whispered. But now, I think it's time the world hears what they tried to silence. Before Hannah could answer, headlights flashed through the trees, bright, closing fast. Her mother's face went pale. They found us. Hannah grabbed her hand. Then we run. Together. And as the first engine roared into the yard, the lilies swayed in the wind, guarding the secret they had kept buried too long. By sunrise, the world already thought Hannah Wells was a criminal. Her phone wouldn't stop buzzing with notifications, hundreds of missed calls, texts, and headlines. She finally dared to look. Breaking news. Waitress linked to murder of business tycoon Ethan Wells. Her picture, soaked, terrified, and caught mid-run outside the Wells Foundation, flashed across every screen. Hannah dropped the phone like it burned her. No, she whispered. That's not possible. Ellen turned from the kitchen table, pale and shaking. Hannah, what's happening? They're blaming me, she said, pacing. They're saying I killed him, that I stole his will. Her mother gripped her hands. You have to go to the police. Tell them the truth. They are the truth, Hannah said bitterly. Cole owns half of them. You think they'll believe a waitress over a billionaire's son? Ellen's eyes glistened. Then what do we do? Hannah's mind raced. We expose him. All of it. Ethan's will. Dad's letters. The whole story. If I can get it to the press, someone outside Cole's reach. They'll have to listen. Her mother hesitated. You mean the media? Yeah. National news. There's a journalist, Mark Rayner. He covered the Cole fraud case years ago. He's the only one who got close. Ellen squeezed her hand. Then find him. But be careful. They'll come for those papers. As if on cue, a car door slammed outside. Hannah's heart leapt. Through the window, 2 men in dark suits approached the house. Mom, hide, she hissed. They ducked behind the counter as the men knocked. Miss Wells, FBI, one called out. We need to ask you a few questions. Hannah's pulse raced. FBI, she mouthed. Her mother shook her head. Don't trust them. The knock grew louder. Miss Wells, open the door, or we'll break it down. Ellen whispered. Back door. Go now. Hannah grabbed the folder of letters and the original will, stuffing them into her backpack. She squeezed her mother's hand. I'll come back. I promise. Go, Ellen urged. Hannah slipped out through the back porch just as the front door burst open. She sprinted through the garden, past the lilies, into the woods. Gunmetal voices shouted behind her, heavy boots crunching the wet soil. She didn't stop until she reached the edge of town. A freight train rumbled in the distance, bound north. She jumped the fence, climbed onto the rear car, and collapsed between two crates, shaking and breathless. The rhythmic clatter of the tracks drowned out her panic. She opened her phone. No service. Just one photo still glowing on the cracked screen. Her father holding her as a baby, the caption scrawled in his handwriting. For Ethan. If you ever find her, tell her the truth. She wiped her eyes and whispered, I'm finding it, Dad. I swear. Hours later, the train stopped at a small rural station. Hannah climbed off, hoodie pulled low, and ducked into a gas station cafe. The TV behind the counter was blaring, her face again. A reporter's voice cut through the static. Authorities are still searching for 26-year-old Hannah Wells, the prime suspect in the mysterious death of philanthropist Ethan Wells. Sources claim she was seen fleeing the scene with classified documents. Turn that off, a deep voice said from behind her. She froze. A man in his 50s, rugged but calm, sat in the corner booth, watching her carefully. You're Hannah Wells, he said quietly. I'm Mark Rayner. Her breath caught. How did you find me? He nodded at her backpack. You weren't exactly subtle getting off that train. Sit down. We need to talk. Hannah slid into the booth, her hands trembling. They framed me. I have proof. Ethan's will. My father's letters. Mark's eyes sharpened. Then let's make sure the world sees them before Cole's people bury us both. And for the first time in days, Hannah realized she wasn't fighting alone anymore. Mark Reiner's car smelled faintly of coffee and old leather. The road stretched dark ahead, rain streaking across the windshield like grey ribbons. Hannah sat in the passenger seat, gripping her backpack, the last remnants of her family's truth, like a lifeline. Mark broke the silence first. You've got guts, kid. Not a lot of people go up against someone like Richard Cole and live long enough to tell me about it. Hannah stared out the window. I didn't ask for any of this. I just wanted to work, take care of my mom. Then suddenly I'm a murderer on national news. That's how Cole works, Mark said. He doesn't kill people with bullets. He kills them with stories, the right lie in the right headline, and poof, your life's over. She turned to him. Then help me rewrite it. Mark glanced at her, impressed. You've got your father's fire, I'll give you that. You knew my dad? Met him once, he said quietly. He tried to expose the same corruption 20 years ago. The story got buried. He paid for it. Her throat tightened. They said it was an accident. Mark's jaw clenched. It wasn't. The car swerved off the highway onto a dirt road surrounded by tall pines. We'll lay low here for the night, he said, parking near an old cabin. Friend of mine owes me a favor. The inside smelled like dust and pine needles, but it was dry and safe. Hannah collapsed on the couch, exhaustion finally catching up to her. Mark sat across from her, flipping through the folder she'd given him. Ethan's will, Daniel's letters. It's all here, enough to destroy Cole publicly. But we need something current, something that ties the sun to the cover-up. Hannah frowned. You mean evidence he's still doing it? Exactly. And I think Ethan might have left that too. She looked up. How? Mark opened his laptop, pulling up a series of encrypted files. Ethan had a private cloud server for his foundation. He mentioned it to me once when we talked about whistleblowers. Said it was his insurance policy. If we can access it, we might find video, emails, proof. Hannah leaned forward. Then let's do it. He typed fast, lines of code flashing across the screen. Problem is, we need two-factor authentication. Ethan's account was tied to a physical token. Her brow furrowed. Like a USB key? Exactly. Without it, we're locked out. She thought for a moment, then froze. Wait. The lighter. Mark frowned. What? She dug into her bag and pulled out the silver lighter Ethan had given her weeks before. He said it belonged to his brother, but what if... She twisted the base and heard a soft click. The bottom came loose, revealing a hidden compartment with a small black drive inside. Mark's eyes widened. Well, I'll be damned. She handed it to him. Try it. He plugged it in, The laptop chimed, the screen flickering before a folder appeared. For Hannah Wells. Her hands trembled as she opened it. Dozens of files loaded, emails, financial records, and video clips. The first video showed Ethan sitting in his study, looking straight into the camera. "If you're seeing this," his recorded voice said, "then I'm gone. Richard Cole and his son have built an echo on stolen blood and silence. Don't trust anyone in their circle. The proof you need is in these files. Finish what your father and I started." Tears welled in Hannah's eyes. Mark whispered, "This is it. This will blow them apart." Before she could speak, the cabin lights flickered. Then, darkness. A pair of headlights glowed through the window, cutting across the room. Mark's expression turned grim. "They found us." Hannah's pulse raced. "What do we do?" He grabbed the laptop, shoving it into her hands. "We run." And outside, the crunch of gravel under boots meant their truth was no longer hidden. It was being hunted. The cabin door shook under the first hit. Hannah grabbed the laptop and backed away as Mark killed the lights completely. Only the glow from the computer screen lit their faces. "Back exit," he whispered. "Go." They slipped out through a narrow hallway into the freezing rain. The forest behind the cabin was thick and dark, branches whipping their faces as they ran. Shouts echoed in the distance, men's voices getting closer. Mark stopped behind a fallen log, pulling a pistol from his jacket. "If they catch us, they'll kill us both. Keep moving north toward the highway. There's a gas station about 3 miles out. I'll hold them off." "I'm not leaving you," Hannah hissed. "You don't have a choice. You're the story now." He pressed the gun into her hand. "If you make it out, go public. Don't hide this. Promise me." Her throat tightened. "Mark, go." Another shot cracked through the trees. Hannah ran. Branches tore at her clothes. The mud sucked at her shoes. She didn't look back, not even when the gunfire stopped. By the time she reached the edge of the highway, dawn was breaking. A delivery truck slowed as she stumbled out from the trees, waving frantically. The driver, startled, rolled down the window. "Please," she gasped, "just take me to the city." He hesitated, but nodded. "Get in." Hours later, the skyline of downtown filled the windshield. Hannah's reflection in the glass was unrecognizable. Wild hair, hollow eyes, dirt on her face. But the determination was still there. She opened the laptop, scrolling through Ethan's files again. There it was, a video time-stamped 2 weeks before his death. Ethan speaking directly into the camera. "I have signed the final will, transferring all assets of the Wells Foundation to its rightful heir, Hannah Wells. If this is found after my death, assume it was not by natural causes. To the board, to the public, know that truth does not die quietly." Hannah closed her eyes. "Thank you, Ethan." She used the trucker's phone to upload the video to every platform she could, news sites, social media, independent channels. Then she sent the rest of the files to Mark's encrypted contact list. When the video went live, the internet erupted. Within an hour, #Justice for Wells was trending. Ethan's face and name flooded the news cycle, his confession replayed across every screen in America. The Wells Foundation offices were swarmed by reporters. Protesters gathered outside Cole Industries with signs reading "Truth over Power." Cole's empire began to crack. His lawyers denied everything at first, calling the video fake, the documents forged. But the evidence kept pouring in. Financial records, internal emails, employee testimonies. By noon, federal agents raided the Cole mansion. Cameras captured Richard Cole Jr. being escorted out in handcuffs, his eyes cold and furious. Somewhere in a cafe across town, Hannah watched it unfold on a flickering TV. The anchor's voice trembled with excitement. "Breaking now. Cole Industries CEO arrested on multiple counts of fraud, obstruction of justice, and conspiracy in connection to the death of philanthropist Ethan Wells. Anonymous sources confirm the whistleblower is the same woman once accused of his murder. Hannah Wells." The other patrons turned toward her, whispering. A waitress set down a coffee in front of her and said softly, "You're her, aren't you?" Hannah looked up, exhausted. "Yeah," the waitress smiled faintly. "You just changed everything." For the first time in what felt like forever, Hannah allowed herself to breathe. She stared at the rising sun outside the cafe window, her reflection blurred by steam, but her peace lasted only a moment. Her phone buzzed on the table, one unread message from an unknown number. "You think this ends with him? It doesn't." She exhaled slowly, her fingers tightening around the mug. Because every truth has its price, and hers had just begun to collect interest. 2 days after the story broke, the world was on fire. Every news channel, every headline screamed about the Wells family scandal. Coal Industries' stock had crashed overnight. Executives were resigning by the hour. But none of it felt like victory to Hannah. Not yet. She sat in the sterile quiet of St. Mary's Hospital, her hands folded tightly in her lap. The faint hum of machines filled the air. Across the room, her mother lay asleep, hooked to IVs, her breathing shallow but steady. When Hannah had finally found Ellen that morning, she'd been unconscious in their living room. Shock and stress had pushed her weak heart too far. Hannah called an ambulance, rode with her here, and hadn't left since. She brushed her mother's hair back gently. "We did it, Mom," she whispered. "They know the truth now." Ellen's eyelids fluttered, but didn't open. Outside the room, footsteps echoed. A nurse appeared in the doorway, holding a clipboard. "Miss Wells, you have a visitor." Hannah frowned. "Who?" Before the nurse could answer, a familiar voice came from behind her. "You didn't think I'd miss the ending, did you?" Hannah turned, and her knees almost gave out. Mark Reiner stood there, bandaged and bruised but alive. "Mark," she breathed, running to him. "You're okay." He grinned weakly. "I've had worse. Those goons back at the cabin weren't exactly trained professionals. I thought you were dead." "You're not that easy to get rid of," he said, easing himself into a chair. "You did it, Hannah. The files, the video, it's everywhere. The FBI has Cole. His father's under federal custody. You burned the whole machine down." She gave a shaky laugh. "I just wanted to clear my name." He nodded. "And you ended up rewriting history instead." Silence settled for a moment, broken only by the soft beep of the monitor beside Ellen's bed. Hannah stared at her mother's pale face. She always said kindness would come back someday. Guess it finally did. Mark leaned forward. "What are you going to do now?" "I don't know," she admitted. "Ethan left me everything, but none of it feels real. Money, property, some foundation. It doesn't change what we lost." He smiled faintly. "You can build something new. Something better." She looked up at him. "You sound like my dad." "That's probably a compliment," he said with a grin. A knock interrupted them. A doctor stepped in, a middle-aged woman with kind eyes. "Miss Wells, your mother's stable, but she needs rest. So do you." "I'm fine," Hannah said quietly. The doctor gave her a knowing look. "I've seen a lot of people win battles and still lose themselves. Go home. Get some sleep. Tomorrow can wait." Hannah nodded, but didn't move. After the doctor left, she whispered to Mark, "I can't leave her. Not yet." He placed a hand on her shoulder. "Then stay. I'll handle the rest." Hours passed. The rain outside turned into a soft drizzle, tapping the window like a heartbeat. Hannah sat by her mother's bed, half awake, half lost in thought. At some point, she must have dozed off. When she opened her eyes again, dawn light was spilling through the blinds. Her mother's eyes were open, watching her with a faint smile. "Hey, baby," Hannah gasped, gripping her hand. "Mom, you scared me." Ellen squeezed her fingers weakly. "You did it, didn't you? You found them." Tears filled Hannah's eyes. "Yeah, it's over now." Ellen's smile deepened. "Then let it be. You don't need revenge anymore. Just peace." Hannah nodded, tears rolling down her cheeks. I promise. Her mother's hand went still in hers, her smile frozen in place. The monitor let out a single, long tone. Hannah's world went quiet, and as the sun rose over the hospital, she realized the truth had cost her more than she ever imagined, but it had also given her something eternal, the strength to start again. A week after the funeral, the rain finally stopped. Briarwood Estate stood quiet beneath a washed-out sky, its windows dark, its once proud gardens overgrown. The lilies had bloomed again, white and defiant, just like the woman who now carried their story. Hannah walked up the stone path, clutching a single envelope in her hand. The lawyer, Mr. Grayson, was waiting by the door. "Miss Wells," he said softly, "I wasn't sure you'd come." "I almost didn't," she admitted, "but Ethan wanted this finished." Inside, the study looked exactly as it had the last time she was here. Only now, sunlight filled the room instead of fear. The portrait of Jonathan Wells still hung above the fireplace, his painted eyes softer somehow, as if the house itself had exhaled. Mr. Grayson opened a folder on the desk. Before his death, Mr. Ethan Wells drafted a revised will. It's now legally verified and recognized by the state. Everything, his assets, the Wells Foundation, the estate, is yours, Miss Wells. Hannah stared at the papers, her chest tight. "All of it?" He nodded. "All of it. He made it clear. He said, and I quote, 'She'll know what to do with it.'" Her throat constricted. She sat in silence for a long moment, staring at Ethan's signature, written with a steady hand days before he died. "What about the employees?" she asked finally. "The staff, the people he supported?" "Still on payroll," Grayson said. "You can dissolve the foundation or redirect it. The choice is yours." Hannah thought of her father, her mother, Ethan, even Charles, everyone who had carried pieces of this broken legacy. "No," she said quietly. "We keep it, but it's not going to be about power anymore. It's going to be about people." The lawyer smiled faintly. He'd like that. After he left, Hannah wandered through the mansion alone. She found Ethan's old piano in the music room, covered in dust. She ran her fingers along the keys but didn't play. The silence was enough. On the desk, she placed the letter she'd written the night before, addressed to Mark Rayner. "Mark, thank you for saving my life, and for believing me when no one else would. The foundation is yours to manage if you'll help me turn it into something good. I don't want another empire. I just want something honest, something human. Hannah." She sealed it, leaving it beside the silver lighter, the same one that had held Ethan's final gift. Outside, the air smelled of wet soil and hope. Reporters still lingered at the gates, shouting questions, but she ignored them. Instead, she walked down to the garden, where the lilies swayed in the breeze. Ellen's ashes were buried there, beside her father's old marker. Hannah knelt, brushing her fingers through the damp grass. "Mom, it's done," she whispered. "They can't hurt us anymore." The wind picked up, carrying the faint scent of rain and flowers. When she stood again, the butler's grandson, a quiet boy who'd started working the grounds, approached her, holding a small wooden box. "Miss Wells, I found this in the attic. Looks like it's for you." Inside was a folded note in Ethan's handwriting. "For Hannah. The Wells name once meant wealth. Make it mean kindness instead." She smiled through the tears. "I can do that." As she turned back toward the mansion, a figure stood near the gate. Mark Rayner, hands in his pockets, watching her with a proud, weary smile. "Ready to start rebuilding?" he asked. She nodded. "Not rebuilding. Redefining." He grinned. "Then let's redefine the world, Miss Wells." And as thunder rolled gently over the hills, the new heir of the Wells legacy walked toward the future, not as a victim, not as a fugitive, but as the keeper of a family finally redeemed. 1 year later, the world had changed, and so had Hannah Wells. The new Wells Foundation headquarters wasn't a marble tower or a walled mansion. It was a 2-story brick building in the middle of downtown, its glass doors etched with 5 simple words. "Kindness is the real inheritance." Inside, sunlight streamed through wide windows, warming the cafe that occupied the ground floor. Baristas laughed behind the counter, students studied by the window, and a quiet hum of music filled the space. Every cup sold helped fund shelters, scholarships, and free community meals. It was everything Ethan had dreamed of, and everything her parents would have wanted. Hannah stood near the counter, now dressed not in a waitress uniform, but in a navy blouse with the Foundation's logo stitched at the collar. She carried a tray of pastries to a table where two young single mothers sat talking softly. "On the house," she said with a smile, "and you're both doing great. Trust me, I've been there." They thanked her, and as she walked back to the counter, she glanced at the wall near the register. There, framed behind glass, hung a single object, the same worn black umbrella she'd given away on that stormy night so long ago. A brass plate beneath it read, "One act of kindness can change everything." It was the heart of the cafe, the story she never got tired of telling. Mark Reiner stepped in from the street, brushing snow off his coat. "Place looks good," he said, grinning. "Lines out the door again. You're turning charity into a movement." Hannah poured him a coffee and slid it across the counter. "Guess people like feeling human again," he chuckled. "You ever miss it? The diner life?" "Every day," she said. "But now I serve more than coffee." Mark leaned on the counter. "You know, the board wants you to expand. New branches, maybe overseas. You're kind of a phenomenon now." She smiled faintly. "Let's start with home first. Change is slow. That's how it sticks." Just then, the doorbell jingled. A little girl, no more than 6, stood shivering at the entrance, holding a broken umbrella and looking lost. Her mother trailed behind, apologizing. "I'm sorry. She saw the sign about free cocoa and—" Hannah waved her off. "Come in, both of you. No charge." She knelt in front of the girl and handed her a warm cup topped with whipped cream. "Here you go. That storm looks nasty." The girl smiled shyly. "Thank you, miss." Hannah nodded toward the framed umbrella on the wall. "You know, that old umbrella up there started all of this." The child tilted her head. "How?" "Well," Hannah said, sitting beside her. "A long time ago, a waitress gave her umbrella to a stranger. She didn't know he was part of her family, or that it would change her whole life. But it did. Because kindness always comes back, even when you least expect it." The little girl looked up at her with wide eyes. "So, if I share my umbrella someday, maybe it'll change my life too." Hannah smiled. "It already has." The cafe filled with laughter and the scent of fresh coffee. Outside, the snow turned to gentle rain, glistening on the pavement like silver threads. Mark watched her quietly, then said, "You know, Ethan would have been proud of you." Hannah looked toward the window, her reflection soft in the glass. "I hope so, but I think he'd say this belongs to all of us now." The clock chimed 6. Another day done, another storm survived. As Hannah locked the doors that night, she glanced one last time at the umbrella on the wall, the same umbrella that had once sheltered a lost man, and revealed an entire family's redemption. And as the rain whispered against the glass, Hannah smiled, knowing her story had come full circle, born from a storm, but built on the promise of kindness that never fades. So that's how the story ends. And if you're still here, listening, feeling, thinking, then maybe something in Hannah's journey touched a part of you too. Because this wasn't just a story about secrets and power. It was about kindness, forgiveness, and courage, the quiet kind that doesn't shout, but changes everything. Life will hand us storms we never asked for. People will lie, betray, or walk away. But as the Stoics said, we cannot control what happens to us, only how we respond. Marcus Aurelius reminded us that every obstacle is an opportunity to grow stronger, kinder, and freer. Like Hannah, you and I can choose to meet cruelty with compassion and pain with purpose. So take a breath, let go of what you can't change, and hold tight to what you can, your integrity, your empathy, your will to begin again. Because sometimes the smallest act of goodness, a shared umbrella, a gentle word, can rewrite an entire life. If this story moved you, leave a like, share it with someone who needs hope tonight, and subscribe so we can keep walking through more stories that heal, that remind us we're not alone in this strange, beautiful storm called life.